people fighting in a ring of water, without slipping and falling and hurting themselves, fighting when these big bursts of flames are erupting all around you. So the boring answer is it took a lot of time and conversation and choreography and safety checks. And the truth is, when I was writing it, I was like, this won't be hard at all, and it was really hard.
Today on the show, we are joined with director Lowell Dean around his brand new movie titled Dark Match that combines both pro wrestling, horror, evil cults, and a ton of fun shit like that. And this film is also starring Chris Jericho, who we recently had on the show, and another guy I'm a huge fan of, actor Steven Ogg. A lot of you may know him as Trevor from the Grand Theft Auto series. And what can I say? This was so fun picking the director's brain after watching this. From the practical effects, his history, and fandom in pro wrestling, and working with the cast, you hear it all in this interview. And also to let you know, Dark Match premieres this week on January 31st. Around playing in select theaters, it is coming directly to Shudder for all you people in the United States. And as Lowell mentions in this interview, this is one you should bring a gang of friends to, watch it as a group, and have a good time. But yeah, with that being said, let's get right into it. Going through your history of like your body of work from werewolf police officers to now um a wrestling federation that's being run by a cult. I just want to know, like, your approach as a director. Are you just trying to have as much fun as you possibly can when you're approaching a project?
Yeah, sure. I am trying to have a lot of fun because making movies is hard. So if you're not starting with something fun, it's just going to become torture. Even a wrestling movie or a werewolf movie, there is a point where you're like pulling your hair out.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw on the social medias for Dark Match, you guys are using a lot of like practical effects and stuff like that, with whether it's just like fire and sprinklers and all that too. And just I guess, yeah, that's got to be like the tough part when it comes to putting these big ideas together.
It is tough, but to me, it's the more preferred route because I'm still very much making independent films, and with fire and water and whatever it is, makeup effects, I can see it. I can stand there in front of it. I can look at it on the day. I can critique it. I can see how it plays with our camera and our lights. VFX is inevitable. You have to use it. It's always going to make things better. But to leave everything to VFX would scare me too much what if something goes wrong? What if it doesn't match? What if it doesn't work? What if we don't have the money for it? So I love practical. I always have loved practical. And I think it's also because I often collaborate with such talented practical effects makeup people and just production artists.
And I'm sure like on the actor side of things too, that helps them as well too, just pretty much making the scenes real, and everything.
I would imagine so,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if I was an actor, I would rather have a fake wall of flames behind me than a real one. But I mean, maybe it helps with the performance, sure.
Yeah, and this movie's so cool. You had Chris Jericho in it, who was also a guest on the show about a month ago, and
Nice.
I'm another person I'm a big fan of, Steve, who's been in the Grand Theft Auto game. He's famous as like Trevor.
Yeah.
And I was thinking this as I'm watching the film. A lot of like these, I guess, these horror style, like maybe you can go into it and like think, oh, this movie might be a little campy or whatever. But as I'm watching like Dark Match, I was just thinking, I'm like, the acting in this is so good and it doesn't feel corny. It got me invested into the film and everything.
That's the best compliment, what you just said, because that's what we really pushed for. You know what I mean? Like, I think because it's set in the world of wrestling, and because I am like maybe the guy who made WolfCop, people might be thinking this is going to be schlocky, it's going to be playful and silly. But I thought there was something far more interesting to walk the tonal tightrope of going serious. So you cared about the characters, even if they're in spandex, even if someone's attacking them with walls of fire and water. So, I wanted it to feel as grounded as possible because I knew that because of the premise, it would still be fun, hopefully.
Most definitely. And yeah, you used the word tone. And again, knowing you from Wolf Cop and then just kind of seeing a little trailer of this, I did expect it to be more campier than it was. But there's like a lot of moments where I just felt intensity too. And I was, like you said, just kind of got invested in these characters along the way and just almost like nervous for them.
Good, good. Thank you. That's what we were going for.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. And I myself too, I'm a big wrestling geek, and I can tell from a lot of the details of just the way these characters are talking to each other and stuff. You yourself have like a history of following wrestling, and I just kind of want to know a bit about your wrestling fandom.
Sure. I mean, I was big into wrestling when I was a kid, like, 8 to 12. Then I kind of got more into movies and comics. But in my late 20s, I started going to local wrestling where I am in Saskatchewan. High Impact Wrestling is the organization. And High Impact Wrestling was so fun, and the crowds were so crazy that it just reignited my love. And I was trying to do a documentary on the behind the scenes of how these wrestlers lived. And that plus research plus watching other documentaries really informed my knowledge of. I was less interested in like the flair of wrestling and more of like the day-to-day mundane world of being a wrestler, and not even like a pro big time wrestler. I'm talking about the giggers, the jobbers who were like going from town to town.
Oh yeah, I could definitely tell too, and yeah, on a bunch of these segments too, I've talked to like a bunch of independent wrestlers and met some in my travels, and there was an authenticity to them, like even before all the craziness started in the movie of them kind of banding together and going to this unknown town. It just felt hella authentic, and yeah, that's kind of cool to hear that background of you too, because it shows.
I hope wrestlers like the movie, like we are serving multiple communities here. Like I want horror fans to obviously, love it, but it would be so great. I would be so happy and just tickled if like, wrestlers adopted this film and started to like watch it and pull things out of it for themselves.
Hey guys, taking a quick second because in the middle of this interview, my stupid internet crashed, but we end up reconnecting with Lowell. But first, before we get back into this conversation, I want to remind you that on January 31st, you can check out Dark Match in select theaters and also across America on the Shudder platform. And as you can tell from this conversation, that this is one for any wrestling fan, horror fan, and all that's in between. And before we get back into our conversation, I want to give the biggest shout out to something that got sent to me. It's called Magic Mind. And basically, it's an all natural cognitive shot full of amazing ingredients from like lion's mane, turmeric, vitamin B, C, D, and much more, all compacted into this little magical thing. And I've experimented with this all month, and I can't praise it enough. If you're looking for a boost of energy and also some calming energy, it'll give you all that without that caffeine crash you get from coffees and Red Bull and all that. And here's a cool box. They sent it in. Boom, boom, boom. And also, if you end up watching Dark Match and getting too scared that you can't sleep at night, they also sent me another box of the Sleep Elixir, which is also all natural ingredients. You wake up the next day, you're not feeling groggy, and I've tried this maybe 3 or 4 times so far, and yeah, it is as advertised. So if you want to check that out, you can go to magicmind.com/creative imbalance JAN for January, and on us you can get 45% off of Magic Mind, and once again that's magicmind.com/JAN. And now, let's get back into this interview. We jump back in talking about the gimmick matches, the practical effects, and what inspired that. So, yeah.
It was kind of like a marriage of spectacle, what you see in wrestling performances, and also, things like movies like Bloodsport and so on. But then it was also the occult side of things. So it was looking at how could this tie into some kind of occult ritual that was big and bombastic and theatrical, but it also felt a little more gladiator than real wrestling, right? So but then also at a low budget thing that you would imagine a bunch of crazy people could actually do in a barn, right? So
Yeah.
it was a marriage of a lot of things, but writing it and actually executing it were completely different things. Like we had to get a lot of really smart, talented people who are great in their fields to contribute, not just our actors, our stunt performers, our fight choreographer, Jean Frenette. We also had to have Jason Paradis and his practical effects team figure out how to safely, have people fighting in a ring of water, without slipping and falling and hurting themselves, fighting when these big bursts of flames are erupting all around you. So the boring answer is it took a lot of time and conversation and choreography and safety checks. And the truth is, when I was writing it, I was like, this won't be hard at all. And it was really hard.
Yeah, yeah. I could even imagine that scene with the water, especially if you had to do like a retake and clean that all up and
And
everything.
we
And
did. And we did,
damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Even another moment. I'm not going to spoil too much of the movie, but there is this one part where they tape their hands, dip it in glue, dip it in glass, and it gave me a flashback when I was a teenager just ordering all these bootleg wrestling things. And there was this one ECW match. It was Axel Rotten versus Ian Rotten, and they did that. And this was a thing I forgot about until I watched this film this morning. And is that the reference you got that from, or was it something else with the glass hands and everything?
I mean, it's just like ancient forms of like brutal combat, right? It wasn't one specific like underground tape or something, although that's great that that brought you back to that because that's kind of what we're going for. But for me, it was I couldn't wrap my head around the Earth match. The Earth match was like, so what? They're fighting in dirt, you know? So it became about obstructions. It's like, what are things that will prevent you from cleanly fighting? What are things that are going to be piled on top of you to make it harder to fight? And Emerson Ziffel, our makeup effects artist, was like, well, what about if we went with this ancient, I can't remember if I had like researched in the script or I was like spitballing ideas with him, but we somehow got to um, the idea of that kind of brutality, where
Mhm.
you can't even throw a clean punch and you can't even touch your own damn skin. And I know I'm well aware of like the underground tapes and the rise and like, these brutal, almost to the death. Sometimes, you get things like Faces of Death too, where you actually see people dying. But like, I
Mhm.
didn't want to, I just wanted to evoke that like disgusting, horrible thing that like there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And even like following Jericho's career, and I listen to his podcast, and he's always a big geek for horror as well, too. So I can just imagine how much fun he had in this role. And I kind of just want to know how he was like on set, and was he very hands-on with showing the actors different wrestling stuff and etiquette and things like
No,
that?
no, he wasn't like that at all. I mean,
Yeah.
he is a horror fan. He was here to be an actor. He was here not to be a wrestler. He didn't want to even really wink at his Jericho persona, like he wanted to embody the leader. And we already knew, much like the fact that wrestlers are fighting to the death, it's absurd. We don't have to wink. And, we talked about tone. That's exactly what he did too. So I'm sure he gave tips. I'm sure he talked about things with the actors and the up and coming wrestlers. But by and large, I think he was just there to be a part of our family. And he was just a calm, like reassuring presence. He just hung out with us at the monitor, We'd joke about things. He had ideas. He would just want to show up and see crazy things happen on days where he wasn't doing his thing, So it was good vibes with everybody.
Yeah, that's super awesome. And one thing I enjoyed too was it also reminded me of a series titled Lucha Underground. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
Oh, no.
but it was actually a wrestling show that was kind of produced by the director Robert Rodriguez, but it was more towards like a PG-13, and where this is like a
No.
rated R version of that too. So I'm just kind of mentioning that too. If anybody's fans of that and wants to see it even more extreme, your movie like checks all those boxes and everything. But yeah, even I feel like or actually one thing I wanted to say too is I noticed it was just the 10th anniversary of WolfCop as well,
Yeah, crazy.
and which is such a fun movie. And right now I notice like in the theaters there's been multiple werewolf movies, from werewolves to Wolfman to, are you inspired at all of making a third Wolf Cop and kind of like showing them how it's done in a way?
I mean, there's a lot we haven't done with Wolf Cop, and there are things undone, and I have no lack of ideas. But yeah, no, right now I'm pretty firmly in the dark match world. I just did another film, Die Alone. So I have a lot of things on the go and things I'm trying to get out there, but I've said this before. I never say never with Wolf Cop. I love the character. Um, I don't have to look too hard to get inspired, and even when other movies come out, I just would want to do something different that we haven't done. Like I,
Mhm.
I have ideas, but the bottom line is I love the group of people that I worked with making those films. So I never have it fully off the table.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's always a fun thing you can go back to. And yeah, I personally like just love it and think it's hilarious. It's like one of my biggest guilty pleasures.
Love
And
it.
yeah, a bunch of I don't know, creatives themselves tend to send me messages saying they listen in on these segments as well. And just as a final question, I wonder, or I just want to know if you have any general advice for a beginner filmmaker who has these big fun ideas and kind of wants to bring them to life, or how they can get them greenlit.
I mean, the biggest, truest thing is there's a couple things. One is you have to finish it. Whatever you do, just finish it. And the other one is if you're cursed with big ideas like I am, don't bite off more than you can chew. Like it's so hard because and I was guilty of this when I was making short films. My friends were making 5-minute short films and getting them programmed in festivals. I was making 45-minute short films and no one wanted to screen them. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, these are great. But in hindsight, they were not great. And also, festivals have to program other films. So if they program a 45-minute film, that's 10 other films they can't program. So I would say experiment with short films until you really find your voice and take on really crazy things, but keep it short. Like make an amazing 5-minute short film. If you really truly have all the energy to create a giant universe and you pour all of that passion into 5 minutes, what a great 5 minutes you're going to make?
Yeah,
That's what
definitely.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. But yeah, just to let the people know, January 31st is when Dark Match is hitting theaters. And outside of the theater dates, is there any like plans for any like VOD releases or DVDs or
Yeah,
anything?
I don't know about DVDs or VHSs, but that would be cool. I do know that it's coming out on VOD sometime after our theatrical in Canada, and it will also be I'm sure streaming soon thereafter, but it's going to be on Shudder in the States as well. So
Oh,
there's
nice.
yes, that's a perfect Shudder movie. So luckily in Canada we get a nice robust theatrical release, so I'm hoping people will turn up because this is a crowd movie. There are movies where you can watch at home and it won't be any difference. I really believe your experience watching this movie in a packed theater will be way more fun.
No, I definitely agree. And I already, after watching the screener, I've told my wrestling friends, you gotta watch this one. And yeah, like always, you always produce like some of the most fun movies. And it was a lot of fun to talk to you today. And I can't wait for your next one.
Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate it. It was a great chat.
Hope you enjoyed this really fun chat around Dark Match. Like we mentioned, this week, January 31st, it is coming to Shudder and select theaters. Do a quick Google and see if it's coming to your area and check this out. Also, in the middle of this interview, we mentioned our new friends at Magic Mind. Once again, if you're looking for a natural cognitive enhancer, something to boost your mood and energy, and like I mentioned, I tried this out before I had them on board as a sponsor. I also took a shot not too long ago as I'm doing my editing for this episode. I don't know if you can tell in my energy, but yeah, it's kind of a nice feeling. And like we mentioned, you can get 45% off by going to magicmind.com/Chris Creative Imbalance, JAN. JAN for January. Once again, that's magicmind.com/Creative Imbalance Jan. And we can't walk away into the sunset without thanking all you legends on the Patreon page. And first up, shout out to the Queen and your favorite DJ, Ola Mazuka of Sonic Fold. Another huge shout out of Amanda McKnight of the Vamp X13 YouTube channel. If you're into comic books, movies, video games, and all that is nerdy, check out Amanda McKnight on YouTube. Another huge thanks to the wonderful Jenny Potter, the legend Devin McBride, back-to-back double impact Allens, the #1 gent Alan Kent, and bigwig Alan Briggs. And last but not least, Francis Coffer, aka my mom. If you want to shout out at the end of every episode and also get these episodes early, raw, uncut, right when I'm done the Zoom call, I just post them. You can go to patreon.com/thecreativeinbalance, and beyond having my forever thanks, you can just go to bed at night and sleep soundly, knowing you're a badass motherfucker who supports raw, uncut, independent media. And nobody can take that away from you. You hear me? And with that being said, like always, we got more for you around the corner, and we will catch you next time. Peace.